Welcome everybody to This Week in Games, episode 175, the GDC episode, because none of us three are at GDC. Eric Sufert is there. Eric Kress is kind of there. Like
I was at GDC. What are you talking about, dude?
Yeah, but what time it is right now?
It's like
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
You should be there already.
No, everyone's nursing their hangover, dude, because they're all out till like 2 in the morning last night with all these fucking crypto parties, dude.
Fuck. I've been hearing insane shit about these crypto parties. And listen, guys, I'm technically a crypto bro. Like, we already have a crypto segment. We just recorded. We were talking. Like, I need an invite to these parties. so come at me. Regarding parties, by the way, Istanbul event, as we've said, Deconstructor event on 31st, where Eric Kress will be there, Eric Sufert will be there, Chris Petrovic, Sophie Vo, you name it. Everybody's there. So the capacity was only 500. It's triple booked, so we can only take 500. The tickets have been issued. Still, if you don't have a ticket and you really need one, and you know, anyways, DM me. We'll figure things out. Maybe, not promising anything, but I would still encourage everybody to register for the event. The link is in the description, because through that you will be able to watch the live feed. We have some amazing talks. Just event is looking really cool. We actually already talked about it that with Google that we will be doing this event next year and bigger, because so many signed up and we didn't really even promote this. So thanks everybody for signing up. So next year Adam is coming as well. He already promised.
Promised nothing.
and final like one thing that I noticed. Hold on, Eric Kress. This is really important. In Spotify, you're listening to this on Spotify. Everybody who's listening on this Spotify, there's this star thing. Apparently, if you just tap it, it gives us a star. If you could do that, that would be amazing. We're now at 4.8 stars. So if we can get to 4.9, if you think that this is a good podcast, you're listening to this, you're having fun, all we ask is just find that button. It's on the top, like right below the image, and just tap it on it once. And that's it. Please continue listening to the podcast on Spotify. Eric Kress, you were saying something.
I haven't even done that. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I just noticed it, and I noticed that we are at 4.8, and we have like 50 reviews. I'm like, wow.
We'll see how good this podcast is. We'll see how good this episode is first.
No, what a downer.
My star.
Well, Adam, why don't you let everybody down? What's going on?
Let's start on a high note. I do want to give a shout out to my old bosses, Steve Chang and Sean Faust, as well as my old colleague, Calvin Lau. They just announced funding for their startup, Fortis. It was raised by Las Vegas Sands. This is just going to be a very, very powerful team. I actually really enjoyed working with these guys. Incredibly candid discussions, especially on product strategy. I'm sure they're going to do great things. So big shout out to them.
Fortis. What does Fortis do?
Games. Honestly, like
publishing
games,
or development, or
I think it's they set it up as a publisher, but they're going to be focusing on. It sounds like online multiplayer games. They talked a lot about kind of like typical raising language of like the most social, the most inclusive.
Does it
games,
have blockchain?
No, it doesn't have blockchain. Thank God.
I mean, I would not rule that out, dude. Honestly, but
Sean has said no NFTs, so I'm
no. I can imagine Sean saying that like really kind of like feverishly, but we'll see where everything.
But these guys could raise money regardless, right? They didn't need to sprinkle in some blockchain to make some money. So
yeah, and Sorry, I wanted to say one thing about these guys. So I actually met with Steve a few months ago when he was trying to raise money for this thing and try to help him out in any way I could, because I think when we talk about consolidators like Stillfront and Embracer, it's like, you know, they come at it from a banking perspective and bringing in assets and putting them together in like some kind of quantitative way. But what I think the difference here, and I think Steve is trying to do this, is that they're trying to do similar thing. But again, these guys are actually experts in managing video game companies and video game processes. So this has, in my opinion, a far better chance of a success than something like Embracer and Stillfront over the long term. Having said that, I think their biggest challenge is that everything's been picked clean at this point, and I think, and I keep talking to everybody at GDC about this, is like, there is a certain level of zero sum game, right? There's just not that many people left, when people are getting $500,000 offers, for engineers, it's like, I don't know how you actually build gaming studios in this environment when there's so many people going after it. So I think that will be a big challenge, and also finding, teams. But these guys are super well connected. They've been in this business a long time. I'm sure they have a set of groups that they're already looking at. So I wish them the best, and excited to see what they do. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Sony Interactive Entertainment is to acquire Haven Entertainment Studios. That was a big headline this week. So this is Jade Raymond's studio. Is now actually officially coming under the Sony umbrella. We were talking about them a long time ago. They worked on an unannounced project for Stadia as first party, but then were sold off to Sony when Stadia first party collapsed. It's noted that the title is a original AAA multiplayer game, which is implying that this is not, like an Assassin's Creed-like or a AAA single-player action-adventure game that I think we predicted and assumed at this point. This, to me, feels pretty out of Jade's wheelhouse. But regardless, they are acquired and now working under Sony, fully funded now, so they have plenty of runway to figure this out. I'll open it up to you.
This the whole Jade thing is very vexing to me. Okay, like we talked about this a year ago, right? A year ago, she left Google and started her own studio with the same group that was making the game for Google, right? And so what I said a year ago, it still says the same thing. She has not made a game since 2013, and it was Splinter Cell. And she has not made a successful game since 2009, which was Assassin's Creed 2. I mean, that's like 13 years. 13 years without a success, yet she's moving from one place to another. And I mean, I wish her the best, but what doesn't make sense to me is that why is Sony hiring a team that has no track record in live services, that is building a live services game to help drive their live services strategy, right? It's like, I think it's very, very, very unlikely that they are successful in their first go, or it's going to take them a long time and a lot of challenges because they just don't have the experience of doing that. And so it kind of just blows me away that this is like where they go for this. But I guess, sarcastically, I'm just going to say sarcastically because I don't know if I could say this, is like, I guess they'll have Bungie to kind of help them navigate through the choppy waters of software as a service. But anyway, I hope she's successful, but I just don't understand exactly, what the expectation is here, to some degree. So
why sarcastically about Bungie? Like, why couldn't Bungie help them? I mean, I'm just asking.
Because there's okay, I've been talking to people about this for a while. There is no fucking way that Bungie is going to divert resources to help Jade Raymond's team or any other fucking team at Sony to build software as a service. Like, that is not happening. That is just not, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense. How many engineers, how many designers, how many people, whoever, they're not going to dedicate resources to level up Sony. This just doesn't, it doesn't make any logical sense to me that is going to be a thing. They're going to be fiercely independent, do their own thing, and that's it. Maybe they'll have a few Slack channel comments or something, but they're just not going to be dedicating resources. So that's why I'm being sarcastic.
Well, Bungie is doing a great lunch and learn at GDC, so all of Sony can go to that where it talks about how they learned how to build live services.
That's the extent of their learning, right? They can go to where everyone else can go publicly and watch them teach how to do it. And I'm not suggesting that Bungie doesn't know what they're doing. I'm suggesting that they're just not willing to do what's necessary to share it with the rest of the studio. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah. So. Bungie's hiring pretty hard. I've seen. I mean, on not on the OF channel, but just overall, I've seen a lot of messages, and now that they're hiring a GDC, and that kind of reminded me. So last GDC where I went on site, well, when was that? 2019? Was 2019 the last one that was happening physically? 2020 and 20, yeah, exactly. So I remember when Epic was hiring at that point hard, and they rented out the full San Francisco, what's the place, coin museum, or the coin, the big neoclassical building just in the downtown, and that was like the full Epic recruitment center. So you had to go into this like almost looking like municipal center. And they had like, I don't know, I just got an invite, so I had to go. I had to just talk to people. And it was crazy.
I feel like you're really missing GDC right now. You're like,
yeah,
oh man, there's all of these boondoggles that are happening, and I'm not there.
But that was the craziest recruitment place I've ever been. I remember going into this room that was like gigantic from like 1800s or whatever. And there was this one guy who was from Texas, I remember, because he had a Texas sticker on his Mac. And they were basically saying like, hey, welcome to Epic. What do you want to do? It was amazing.
We have money. Here you go.
Yeah, I was like, I told him like I actually didn't know that this was an interview. I thought you guys wanted to just chat, and they were just basically hiring everybody. That was in 2019. So good times. I hope Bungie's doing something similar. Other than the lunch and learn.
I don't know if they're just hiring anybody off the street.
That was what Epic was doing, but now they can. I mean, they're fully resourced and they're growing big, and it's already a big studio. So why not?
But I guess for Eric's point, right? Like the amount of effort on an ongoing basis that has to happen in order to train a studio to be effective at live services, and still how those studios can fall down and have to learn from those mistakes over a number of games, is the reality of many of these teams. So nothing against Jade Raymond, right? It's just, it takes a long time for premium developers to figure out how to do this. So even just asking, single people at Bungie to kind of share their knowledge while they're still trying to live operate Destiny is just going to be infeasible. It's not going to be an overnight switch. It's not even going to be, 1 or 2 years. It's going to take a long ass time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's actually my point. It's going to take a long time. It may happen eventually, but I think I'll be retired in like an old folks home by the time that happens.
Wait, you're not? Oh, I thought you were retired now. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I like that in the notes for this particular subject that was said like how, like you made the reference for me. Like I was laughing because he was just saying like, how is she moving from all these great companies from one another? It's like without shipping. And he said like that's like Mishka. That was in the notes. And to be fair, on the external side, you're absolutely right. But I've placed a lot of games in soft launch. They just never passed it, so I'm kind of shipping. But yes, that was a fair comparison. So thank you for that.
Mishka, you kind of missed the context of that, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just laughing. I was just looking through the notes.
Yeah, that was mean. I apologize ahead of time, or I apologize.
No, I laughed. It was really good. It was really good. It was. But okay, let's talk about.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on. Let's talk about our boy JK. So Joseph Kim, his company Leela Games has raised 10 million round for free-to-play mobile game studio in India. Shout out to JK. I've been following his Instagram. He's out there. I've been just texting him like, dude, please stay alive, because he's posting these Instagram pics where he's riding these rickshaws and he's like riding behind somebody's scooter. And I don't know, guys, I don't know where he is. He's not in Bangalore with something with a B. But I mean, the traffic looks insane.
Dude, I did a panel with him on Monday night at the App Annie event. And him and I are just completely aligned on everything. It was actually a relatively uneventful, like there was no discussion or debate. He even talked a little bit of trash about ARK investments. So I don't know. It was good to see him though. He's as mellow as ever. He's doing fine.
He's doing fine.
This is a great raise. This was also done by Krafton, right? Was it actually like Krafton themselves? Yeah.
I think Krafton India invested something into it. There was Bitcraft and Galaxy, which were his previous investors, and I think there was somebody from SF, not maybe Sequoia, maybe somebody else. I kind of forgot. Sorry, JK, about that. But nevertheless, congratulations for the raise. And I think he was saying that he's gonna move to India, or at least spend significant amount of time in India. Like I have to ask how he handles that, because he has 3 kids and a wife and everything in SF. But anyways, kudos to him, and hopefully, they get to build the team, and they're clearly building a new studio, and it's rocking, and all the best to him.
I got one other update.
Go ahead.
CD Projekt. Did you see that news?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, CD
right.
Projekt has now confirmed that they're going to be working on the next Witcher game, because, of course, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. But yeah, all I can say is I hope they pick up from the ashes of Cyberpunk and focus on just creating a great Witcher game. Let's not inflate expectations this one of like a 20 million sold GTA Online service. This is going to be a great Witcher game. Go ahead, Eric.
I mean, this is kind of a big deal in a way because, first of all, like, aren't they making the same mistake that they made before, like announcing this game so freaking early when they literally had said it? I think they actually said that they are barely starting it, right? So,
but
I mean, this could be
Cyberpunk's announcement was like E3, like on the main stage. Here comes the logo. Okay, holy so shit, this thing is coming.
All right, so your point is this is a more of a subtle announcement, but the bigger issue here is that they are moving on from their engine that was really broken on console, that caused a lot of the issues that they were having to Unreal 5, and so from a technical perspective, and as I've said many times, I am not a game developer, so I don't really quite understand how this all shit works, but like, I mean, isn't that like a Herculean task to move from an engine they've been using for the last like 20 years to Unreal and rebuilding all the tools and technology and getting all the assets and all the other things that require? And so I've been asking around about that, and I'm kind of getting mixed a sense here, but it does add layers of complexity. And the second thing that I'm kind of trying to understand is, like, if you have these two engines, right, they're mutually exclusive. So if you have teams that are working on supporting the old games in the old engine, they are dedicated to that. And then you have to actually reallocate resources to the new engine to build the tools and technology and transfer things over and start actually building a game. And doing that and building a game at the same time seems relatively Herculean, right? And so some people are saying, oh, no big deal. It's Unreal. There's lots of tools out there, and like it's a really well-known engine. Of course, Unreal 5 is still in beta, by the way, just to be clear. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is that I forgot the second thing. What's the second thing? But on the other hand, this game. Oh yeah, on the other hand, this game's not coming out until 2029. that's like the gamut of, like, it's 3 years and 10 years type thing. You know, it's like it's pretty wide. So what do you think, Mr. Adam? I wanted to get your kind of expert opinion.
So it's Unreal 5 then, eh? Do you know what did they just have a proprietary engine before, or what was their engine before?
Oh, there's a proprietary engine, right? So it's home built, completely, like, you know, put together with tape and straw and that type of thing over the years, you know, like as all engines are, you know, after all this time.
Clearly a very PC focused engine.
PC I mean, it was amazing on PC. Like I'm not throwing, like, it was amazing PC engine. It just was terrible on consoles, right? I mean, I think it was a memory thing or something like that. I can't remember, but like at the end of the day, it's, you know, So I don't know.
It just freezes your resources, right? Like, your tech team is going to be so focused on building all the tools, rebuilding from scratch all those tools. Like, yes, Unreal gives a lot of that stuff out of the box, but all the stuff that they need to build for a RPG game, a single-player RPG game, is substantial for world building, for quests, for all of this stuff, to even just build up to a point that they have a sandbox that designers can do something in the game, right? So during that time, you're going to have designers and artists and all that kind of stuff, not necessarily sitting on their hands, but working in theory instead of in practice in the engine. Versus before, where when you kind of jump from game to game, keeping on that same engine, keeping on that same thing, you can, you know, leverage a lot of the tech and tools that you had before, and you give those designers and artists, technical artists, like a sandbox to play in almost immediately. You can get stuff playing on the screen. So yeah, whenever you change engines, especially substantially, like not even just like Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, but now we're talking like proprietary to Unreal 5. It's going to be a substantial amount of work. So, yeah, this is a long project for them.
Yeah, that's kind of my instinct. And then the other thing that's always like the death knell of development process is, like, while you're building the engine while building the game, right? So, like, you're building the tools and technologies while you're building the game. So it creates lots of reworks and all this other shit that you have to do that makes it really hard. So let's do an over-under, and then we'll move on from this conversation. So... over under 2028.
Wow. Okay, so you're saying it's not going to come out until over 2020? I think it'll be 2028. All right,
I'll take the over. because
Okay.
I'm that negative. All right, moving on.
Okay.
So that will be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by that time,
Reasonable.
the stock will be like $5 because you
Or
can't survive
zlotys.
without releasing a game for 5 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, Poland. But anyway, moving on.
All right. Okay, so Forever raises Forever, meaning FRVR. By the way, not the greatest name for a company that doesn't do VR. Anyways, Forever raises $76 million to expand casual games platform. The company's catalog of HTML games can be played from a browser and on mobile. The platform has reached 1.5 billion players since launch, the announcement said. Now, Adam, didn't you try to make HTML games back in the days? Like, this could be you.
So, well, no. FRVR was there well before even we did, right? Like they had the tech. The interesting thing when we chatted with them was like we're talking about like Facebook Instant games, WhatsApp games. We were using like Cocos 2D for HTML5 stuff because we weren't engine developers. We just wanted to make fun games and see if we could spin something up on Facebook Instant. FRVR did the right thing, which is they built a proprietary engine which absolutely optimized for load time. So as soon as HTML5 kicked in, you got that link to that game, it would load up in milliseconds, even on low-end devices. And that really drove a lot of their success, at least in my opinion. They were the top games on Facebook Instant, right? They made a successful business when most companies, including myself, were not successful. So if you were at, like, I think we've talked about them before, if you are going to invest in instant games and believing in a post-App Store world, FRVR is a great company to do it. So, whether it's worth 76 million and 1.5 billion valuation, or sorry, what's the actual valuation?
They didn't mention the actual valuation, but
okay.
I'm sure everybody's worth $1 billion nowadays.
That's an easy fight. But yes, if you're going to invest in instant games, FRVR is a good company to do that.
Yeah. It's again, bad name for a company that makes instant games to be called FRVR.
Well, it's Fervor.
Great company, maybe a name change. Just throwing it out there. You don't have to do it, but if you make instant,
Let's
don't
go on
call
to the
yourself
best.
VR.
Let's go to the greatest name, which is Bored Ape Yacht Club.
So Bored Ape Yacht Club creator raises $450 million to build an NFT metaverse. What else would you expect? So Yoga Labs, the owner of three of the biggest NFT brands on the market, has raised $450 million in funding at a $4 billion valuation. The company announced today that the team behind Bored Ape Yacht Club plans to use the money to build media empire around NFTs, starting with games and its own metaverse project. Now, I could talk a lot about this, and I actually have. It's in the tokenomics episode that will be probably aired before this one. So Ethan and Anton and I actually discussed this. It's craziness. Like, did you know that Bored Ape Yacht Club actually released a game before? It was called Apes versus Mutants. Yeah. And to my research, you know how many players that game got over the lifetime? Because this is the biggest brand, so everybody knows Bored Ape Yacht Club. Guess.
1 million.
30,000.
Oh,
Actually,
I guess I won that one. 2,000.
Yeah, so if I would ship a game that would have 30,000 players, you would kill me, like over the lifetime. And you wouldn't give me 450 million to build a metaverse, being like, you know what, this looks great. let's build more around this. So, anyways, but nevertheless,
game?
What
are you doing
on the
in it?
positive side, like essentially they are, on the. Actually, I don't want to go deeper. Like, you can listen to the tokenomics episode. We talk about their pitch deck. I don't know. Like, the pitch deck was most outrageous thing I've ever read. Like, it was tongue in cheek. It was like, we don't give a fuck because we're gonna raise gazillion dollars on whatever we put in. So we're gonna talk about. We talked about that in the tokenomics episode. So please listen to that if you're interested in how to raise $450 million on JPEGs with apes. Should we talk about...
If I had $400 million, $450 million, I would just go out and try to find a good MMO studio to do this. I would not trust myself.
There were concepts in that pitch deck, and the extent of the MMO is I mean, it's essentially land sales. Like they make same type of JPEGs with now land plots, and then there's the new type of a character that could be in those land plots, and there's like about 100,000 of those, and it's a crypto cis auction place.
But I would just say, like,
owning it.
A studio that has at least experience with managing the macroeconomics of an MMO.
You don't need that. You don't need that. Just JPEGs, dude. Just JPEGs.
No, I think you do need that. And I would go out and try to find that talent. If you raise this much money, go find the talent that is at least had the battle scars of running an MMO.
This company, Adam, has 46 employees and 2 presidents. 2 presidents. Not CEOs, 2 presidents.
I have no idea. I'm aware of like the craziness of the crypto bros of this thing, but I just would not be that naive that I could assume that I could walk into an MMO world and dominate, even with the leverage that they have around these avatars.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure they will do great. I think that their MMO will make gazillion dollars. And they're going to be super successful, and it's absolutely non-repeatable. That's the most important part. This is the lightning in the bottle. And then final update, Fortnite raised $36 million for Ukraine in a single day. Just a shout out of good stuff from Epic. Eric Kress.
Oh, is it my turn?
It's your turn.
All right, GDC update. First of all, thank you guys all for the support and enthusiasm. It was quite humbling that everyone was relatively nice and supportive. So you have to understand, like, this is like the first time like I've been out at a conference since we started the podcast. So and it's been over 2 years. And what I quickly realized is that I've been actually screaming into this microphone for 2 years, speaking my nonsense, right, without any type of direct feedback, right, over all this time, right, and then sitting in front of like 60 people at the App Annie event, it was a little fucking intimidating, It's kind of like when you're driving your car and someone cuts you off and you start cursing at them and conking your horn and shit, and you're just super bold, right? And then all of a sudden, like a few blocks later, you're at the stop sign and this guy is right next to you, right? And he's like a 300-pound fucking wrestler, and you're just like slinking down in your chair. That's kind of how I felt on stage at the App Annie event. But nonetheless, it all went relatively well. I mean, there was some positives and there was some negatives. So I think I'll focus on the negatives first. The first one was this guy at App Annie introduced himself to me, and he's like, yeah, I do casual games. I do hyper casual games. And I know you hate hyper casual games, but I know all I do is mice nuts, but my name is this. And I'm like, I felt pretty bad, and I tried to backpedal. I'm like, hey, no, you do solitaire. You're good, man. I like that. I just don't like the voodoo stuff, like that. But anyway, so.
And then like next to him is the voodoo guy being like,
yeah, exactly. Fuck off. The second experience was a little bit annoying. I wasn't going to share this because I feel really guilty about it to some degree, but I'm going to do it anyway, right? So just to be clear here, if you have an MBA from Harvard and you've worked at McKinsey, that does not give you the license to have an opinion on everything. Okay, that is the fundamental point that I want to get across, right? And I should probably leave it at that, but I'm not. Right? Is that I don't mind. You can have an opinion, but when we're discussing things that happened when you were in middle school, let the adults talk. Okay, and shut the fuck up. Right? It's quite annoying, right? That the opinions of people that just have no experience whatsoever. And I think McKinsey, Bain, investment bankers all breathe this kind of like, insane levels of ego that they can come in and make judgments on things they can't possibly understand or have any experience to understand. All right. On a side note along these lines, is I am hearing very scary things about EA these days, is that the strategy group is getting inundated with McKinsey and Bain people. And these people are like fungus, dude. You get them in and they multiply in the organization, right? And they create absolute chaos, right? Because they don't know what they're doing when it comes to this sort of thing. Anyway, and so what they do is they hire these guys in the senior levels, and they need to surround themselves with like-minded people that they can marvel at their fucking pedigrees and spout this fucking industrial psych jargon bullshit with each other so they can feel good about themselves. But it is a potential disaster for EA to be having like these legions of people. Typically, like Laura Miele, who's the one that's been doing strategy for a long time, like she's an OG, man. She came from Westwood, right? And so she's always hired people that were gamers, as far as I can tell. And so if that's changing, I worry for the future of EA, and I think it's my duty to appoint to just talk about this and make sure that this doesn't happen. None of this spread of the fungus. All right. Okay. Anyway, so most of the part. So that was the negative, but for the most part, everything was really, really positive, and everyone was super nice. Like this woman from Big Fish was like super sweet. Like she's a fan, I guess. That was really nice to hear from her. But out of all the people that talked to me, like over a dozen, right? More than half of them basically said the same thing, right? This one guy from Navik who's obviously brilliant. The guy must be Spectrum, dude. He was like in his own world. But anyway, he said it the best, and I'm not going to really replicate how he said it. But what they really like is that they love the fact that I express my views that are against the current narrative from the companies and from the press, right? So that I have an alternative narrative that brings up the discussion or keeps the discussion. And so what they say is they were exhausted at having to listen to the same type of bullshit over and over again, both at the companies as well as in the press. And it's good to have someone out there that's actually just calling shit out, right? And so I think this is more indicative of what's going on in the broader world, right? Whether it's politics or whatever, right? Yeah. But in this narrow, like in this one lane, of gaming, I could do that without getting canceled, I suppose. But I probably will get canceled ultimately. But I promised everyone that I talked to that I was going to stay in this pocket. I'm not going to go down the Ukraine road like Mr. Mishka or start talking about other political issues or frickin' the death penalty or religion, right? We are going to focus on games. I'm going to stay in the pocket and keep like giving alternative views about what's going on there and feel valued out there. So anyway.
So congratulations, this consultant from Navik. You have now just emboldened Eric to become more of an asshole for the next few years.
Basically. him as well as the rest of the people that were saying basically the same thing. Yes. I'm definitely emboldened. And and more importantly, I feel like I'm adding value, right, for the first time in my life, right? So it's good.
I'm scared what will happen after next week, because you're like, if you're now in front of 60 people, you'll be in front of 500 next week.
Oh yeah. I just
people are kind of like half worshipping you, so and you travel on the other side of the world in front of this giant audience.
I'm gonna disappear into the mountains of Turkey or something. All right. A couple clarifications though, just to be clear, because I get these comments. I got a lot of comments over things. First of all, I don't hate Ethan. Actually, I don't hate Ethan at all. He may hate me. I don't know, but we are totally kidding around about this crypto stuff, right? Just generally speaking. The second thing is, yes, Mishka talks way too much and really talks off topic constantly. Like we try to rein him in, but it's impossible, right? He's a force of nature, right? It's impossible to rein him in, but we keep trying. And then finally, yes, Eric Seifert does look like a child molester with that Asian mustache.
What?
And we've had numerous requests for him to remove it, but he will not. He lost his bet, and he's keeping it on just to annoy everybody, his wife, his family, and the people on the podcast. So those are the clarifications. But keep the feedback coming. And anyway, moving on. Oh, updates. All right.
Yes.
Okay, quick updates. 1, EA Play is skipping their live event in 2022. So this is a really simple update. They have fuck all the show, so they're not doing it, right? So let's wait till next year and they'll be back. I don't think this is any like indication of E3 not happening or people doing events around that time frame. It's just the fact that EA has nothing to show. They have no games this year, and that's it, right? So don't worry about it. E3 will be back in some capacity, or promotions around E3 will be back. That was my one update. Oh, and that's it.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
Okay. And then we're going to talk about Apex Legends afterwards.
Yeah. There was not a lot of news, naturally, because everybody's at GDC. Not everybody, but half of the people are at GDC. So I wanted to bring back the topic that I casually quickly mentioned in the updates of last week. I think we talked about Lightforge games, and I was just making a remark of them being fully remote, and just said a couple of notes, and that created conversations on the DOF Slack channel. People are apparently very opinionated about this. And then, then of course, when people are having conversations, I tend to start writing. So I wrote a newsletter piece. A few thousand of you have already read it. So if you're not, by the way, subscribed to DOF newsletter, please do. There's a lot of cool content. Anyway, so what I wrote about the benefits and some of the challenges with it. And of course, with benefits, when it comes to fully remote, is ability to recruit people from multiple locations, being just very employee friendly because there's no commuting. It's cost effective because you don't have to have your office. You don't also have to hire the people from the, if you happen to be in a gaming hub, you don't have to hire the people from the most expensive locations. Not to mention that remote work can be quite productive when you're left alone, like Adam Telfer, silently in his lodge next to Toronto. He's just extremely effectively working, unlike he would be in the party town of LA. But there are also some problems when it comes to it. First of all, there's a challenge in communication that's real. I've been talking to a lot of CEOs who have been, not only CEOs, but a lot of people who have been running companies before COVID and during COVID and during the lockdowns. And what one particular person mentioned was that he feels like he's being a diplomat, constantly in between people who are having some kind of misunderstanding. And that, in my opinion, really leads from a fact that a written word from an avatar is really not the same thing than a discussion face to face. And because there's this lack of human interaction, it easily leads to all kinds of loss of nuance and people arguing, and that escalates. So the need for communication is actually much larger in a fully remote setup. Number two, you're missing from those ad hoc conversations between coworkers. You're having lunch, you're having coffee, you start talking. Some people might say you're wasting time, but sometimes good ideas come from that, and those are really important. The coffee machine, water cooler talks. Then something that I've been hearing, I don't know if this is fact or not, so curious to hear if there's any kind of study around this, but lack of loyalty. And this is actually Joshua Wilson mentioned this in the last podcast that we did from SciPlay, CEO of SciPlay. And lack of loyalty in the sense that you're joining a company, you're at home, and you might as well join any company. As long as the pay is good and the project is interesting and you're working reasonable hours and people are respecting your work-life balance and things are good, like you can just change a company because you don't have any kind of attachment to it. Of course, if it's a great brand for that company, then perhaps, but in the end, it's about the money and the project. So that may, in my opinion, as well lead to lack of loyalty long term, because when you're working with certain people, you build relationships. You don't want to leave. You're having fun time. You're enjoying their company. You're building friendships, and that's a strong thing. Something that another challenging part, something that I have noticed is the tax and legal nightmares, especially with the current crisis going on a war going on in Ukraine. We got the Belarus. Like, of course, we as a company, my company uses people who worked in Ukraine, worked in Belarus. Those are hotbeds for game development. Extremely challenging, but also with the Belarusian studios right now, with the SWIFT disappearing and all the payments even before that, it was just challenging. And when you have people in a lot of different countries, in the US, it's different. Everybody's in the same country, so it's easy to hire people around it. But in Europe, it's much harder. You have different legislations, different tax codes. It's expensive. It's a lot of work. Then remote work also mentioned something that it can burn people. You don't essentially have a break. You're constantly working. You're at your workplace. And finally, something that I personally think is very challenging is building an engaging and outstanding company culture in a fully remote setup. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how companies do that. I understand how they're being extremely efficient, and those are the values, and how they appreciate everybody's work-life balance and things like that. But that's not, culture per se. Anyways. I wanted to mention a couple of things that again came after this newsletter. So one part, what Dylan mentioned, from Dylan from Crazy Lab mentioned that the first visible impact of remote work will be the death of many studios who aren't located in game dev hubs. Smaller studios outside the hubs have relied on underpaying their talent. That is coming to an end with the remote work that democratizes the salary. So I think this is an interesting notion, and I think this could be true now that developers everywhere have more opportunities than before. People mentioned that remote jobs will continue, but they will likely see some salary limit on remote jobs due to international arbitrage. Highest paying jobs will likely be on site, was I mentioned. Some of the ultra bullish people, some of the people on the Slack channel are extremely bullish on remote work. One person wrote that after spending the last 2 years working on a plus 100 people dev team in full remote, it's actually made me think that non-remote work is the thing that is more likely to go out of style. Though I have to mention this particular person who was extremely bullish on it was working on a top grossing title, but this title is almost a decade old. So I understand that in a team that is operating like a train, essentially, like they've been running it for such a long time, it's probably easier to get into it than a team that is a little bit new or is working on a new game. And then finally, there was a good point in that on-site is important for juniors who are the hardest to fit into remote work. In-person mentorship observation adds much to the growth, and it's harder to replace remotely. Now, to finalize this, I want to give a shout out to Annette Steloy from DirtyBit. She summarized this extremely well, this whole topic that I was trying to cover, when she was giving me feedback on my newsletter draft. And what I'm kind of paraphrasing, but she's basically said that people who are not in management position very often lack the ability to see the challenges with remote working, and over-focus on the advantages of working from home brings to them on an individual level. It seems very easy to focus on what works best for me, not what works best for my team, the project, the company. While in a management position, it seems to be easier to see the challenges related to a company culture, lack of communication, or even miscommunication that may lead to frustration and overall performance. So I wanted to cover this topic because this is something that I've noticed has been extremely challenging, trying to figure out not how to work remotely, but how to build a culture, how to keep people happy when in a fully remote setup. And our company is a hybrid with two studios. So what I've noticed is that when people get together in each of the studios, they like spending time together. You get a good feeling. You leave the day happier. And when everybody gets into one location, people don't even want to leave the studio. They're there. I'm leaving early. So there are merits to being on site. There are merits to being hybrid, and I think we're kind of over emphasizing the remote work as this is the new thing. But in the long run, I think this will be more of curiosity and something that is left for studios that don't have as much prestige that they could request people to work on site. And most of the studios will be. Most of prestigious studios will be working in a hybrid setup with specialists in remote location or people who don't need to be on site, possibly in remote location. Adam, you're working remotely. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, obviously I'm very biased here, right? Like I have a very vested interest in staying remote for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I moved back to Canada to be close to family, and bought a house and intend to stay here. It would be really unfortunate if I get to a situation where I can't continue to have an impact on the industry because people don't want remote work, right?
Yeah.
So I have a vested interest in keeping remote work effective, right? So what I do is, I think as we transition to kind of more of a state of normalcy with office work, right? I have to go out of my way to make sure that I'm traveling as often as I can to build up the relationships that I need, right? Because as much as I'm a huge proponent of remote work, I think there is still a lot to be gained by seeing people in person, right? And being right there and building up the relationships that you can't have over a Zoom chat. But at least in the position that I'm in, which is not the majority of the gaming industry, where like my boss works in San Francisco, I'm based in LA. I work with studios all the way around the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for my role to be in LA. Like it doesn't really give me much of an advantage. If you're working on a new game, right, and you've never worked with the people that you worked with before, that's a scary proposition to put together a remote team. In order to do that, you know you'll be less effective. You'll be iterating at a disadvantage, right? And you have to over communicate. And I think in those situations, you're more likely to at least lean back towards, maximum of a hybrid work environment, make sure everybody's within the same time zones, all this type of thing. I guess like it's difficult for me to say, like you put together like a good list of like the pros and cons, which I think are obvious to everybody who's worked remotely for the last 2 years. And we'll see how much, people go into the office and do a hybrid environment. But it's difficult to say, like, are you saying that remote work will no longer be, or are you saying that no? Like my sense is that for new game teams, you probably should be going with hybrid, if not fully on site. If you're talking about live game teams with established practices, then you can go to a more remote style. I think that can be effective. Yeah. And then, as new game studios, being remote can be one thing that you use to kind of get the best talent. Because for me, when I'm making decisions about talent, I'm much more likely to say, I don't care where you live. I want the best talent, because even if I only get you, working 70% effectively because you're remote, I'd rather have the smartest person at 70% than somebody that I have to be actively training at 100%.
To be clear, I didn't try to make up, like, it's weird. Everybody wants to make a point like this works and this sucks. I wasn't trying to make that type of point. I was making a point that at the moment, everybody considers that remote work is the only way forward, and you're not almost even allowed to talk about the problems of remote work and the challenges of remote work. And I was just trying to say that there are a lot of challenges that we're not talking about, and that in the long run, there will be hybrid. But with this remote work, I think it's great that we can do hybrid now because everybody understands how to work remotely more effectively, and B, we're much more okay with having specialists or people who don't need that much face time being located in different places. Like this person is really good, and we're fine with that person just traveling maybe once a week or every second week here. That's good enough. We don't need him or her here all the time, and I think that's a great element that has changed when it comes to recruiting. Like, you don't have to relocate. But on the long run, I think hybrid is the prevailing option.
I think my favorite thing of all of this remote work has been the amount of bullshit meetings that I've been in. And I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but everybody's in bullshit meetings all the time.
Of course.
And being able to just, it's like listening to a podcast. You just put the meeting on in the background, you listen through it. I'm ripping through so many more emails. I'm getting through way better communication because of this stuff, right? And with hybrid work, look, I'm looking forward to being able to like fly down to the States and go to a meeting and see people in person. But then having like a condensed time of, now is the time that we actually want to work effectively and look at each other. And then when I go back, I'm going to be able to work on the decks, work on the communications, figure out ways to get alignment. And also, there's been a lot more focus on, do we actually need to meet about this? Or can we just, hash this out on a document, hash this out in an email, right? Like so much time is wasted that now we figured out how to do it asynchronously, and it's so much more effective.
Yeah, I love the fact that now when you're seeing somebody, when you actually travel on site, you can focus on relationship building. Like, I'm here to build a relationship. I don't need to try to get all these things done because I can do on my flight here and there, and I have like
now is the time that we're going to drink beer and just chat shit about the industry.
Exactly.
I don't care if it's 8 a.m.
Exactly.
Done, right? We're going to do this.
So it makes the on-site even better. And like, even in my case, when I go to the studio a couple times a week, like, I don't expect to be as effective as I am at home. But nevertheless, I find it extremely useful that we have lunches together, that we'd sit down and people talk to me about something that wasn't on my calendar. And I noticed that I'm missing on my things that I was supposed to do, but nevertheless, I'm having a very important conversations with people. Not important, but important for folks to just talk. Yep. Anyway, I'm not gonna ask Chris. He it's so long. It's like 3 decades since he worked last time. So
you're
muted also.
You're muted. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Also, there was way too many words. I didn't even follow the conversation, to be honest. Okay. No, I did hear one guy flippantly say something along the lines of, like, once we go through one cycle of promotions, then everyone's going to start working from office again. It's like, that's what I kind of think. But what the fuck do I know, dude? I don't know anything. I personally, I couldn't stand it. I would love to work in an office again. I'm going to go back to Warner as soon as I can, right? One day a week. Anyway, all right. EA Mobile. Okay, so EA released Apex Mobile in beta. It's open to pre-registration on the Google Play Store, but it's not on the iOS store. And this is what I found out about the iOS store. I am blown the fuck away, right? Is that you cannot do pre-registration on iOS more than 60 days before because of some technical glitch on their system? Is Apple really that clueless, right? Like, don't they have engineers that they can fix this? I mean, there must be another reason besides some technical problem. But it just continues to amaze me about how little Apple cares about publishers. It is like blows me away that this can't be fixed. And this has been going on for years, evidently. How I didn't know this is another thing that I should have known. But anyway, all right. Apex Legends is a huge deal for EA, really, this year, because for the most part, they have fuck all, right? They have no games coming out this year except for their traditional games that they release every year. So this game is important for them to do well. And from what I can gather from coverage on YouTube, the YouTube and stuff, is that the game looks phenomenal, right? It looks like they've been able to replicate the visuals pretty well on mobile. And the frame rates look really solid. And people are saying that even on low-spec devices, it's actually performing reasonably well. So that's good. Of course, it is a beta, or an alpha, a beta, right? Yeah. The controls and shooting seem to be really good. Although you're still playing with the touchscreen, which sucks badly, but whatever. And I think the big plus here is that it didn't try to sync it up with PC and console. I think that causes lots of issues, and some people think that may be a missed opportunity, right? They should have a way of quote unquote cross-platform, like that buzzword. But then again, you can optimize on mobile the way Call of Duty and PUBG have done over the years, which I think is frankly the smarter move. And so far the network tech looks solid, but again, I don't know how many people are actually playing at any given time. So that may change when the launch happens, right? On the negative side, this seems, again, much more niche than Call of Duty, right? So as a game, it is more niche by definition almost, based upon Apex on console and mobile. There's, I believe, a lack of bots, and I need to confirm this, but it doesn't look like it's all player-based, right? So that could get frustrating for new players. That may be a missed opportunity. I'm actually interested in what Adam has to say because he's better at this. And then for such a core game, this is my biggest concern, is for such a core game, it makes more sense to play on better controls with console and PC. But that may be just me. Maybe it just people like to play this stuff on mobile. I just don't get it really personally. But so my gut is telling me, and this is probably another over-ender but for me and Adam and I or whatever, is that this is going to be more like a core select audience, and it should lead to potentially lower downloads but better monetization. So I think it could do better than Call of Duty in the first 6 months because Call of Duty had a rough start. But it really feels kind of hard to predict at this stage. Any thoughts at all from your end, Adam? Or Mishka, for that matter?
I do agree on the bots thing, especially early on when they just don't have matchmaking figured out fully.
Right, Geo,
Yeah, and just like obviously Call of Duty and PUBG Mobile really lean on those to get that early retention right.
To make you feel like a badass. I mean, maybe it's just me. Like, I'm terrible, right? So, but I want to go in and kill fools, right? And if I'm automatically against like these really fucking sweaty tryhards, I mean, it's not fun, right?
Yeah, but this is for a younger audience. Like usually these are geared towards the 20-year-olds. And so but, I don't know. I've been looking surprisingly, I've been looking a lot at mobile shooters and some of the retention and ARPDAU numbers. Like Call of Duty and Garena Free Fire Max are the outliers. Their retention numbers are absolutely insane. Like we're talking about day one retention for a big shooter game at 60%, and they get up to D30 at 20%. So these are like supercell retention numbers, and The monetization,
Are you getting that from like App Annie or Sensor Tower or something?
yeah, Sensor Tower. Yeah, and I'm talking about US, so I'm focusing on the tier one audience.
All right.
And yeah, both Android and iOS, and the monetization, like it's not crazy with these games. We're talking about ARPDAU of like 10 cents, but with the retention numbers like that, it's fantastic. So if
No,
Apex
stop.
Mm-hmm.
That is an incorrect statement. You can say the retention numbers are good, but if the ARPDAU is that low, that's not good, right? You can have one and not the other. But I don't know, Adam.
You can make a business case out of it. I've been putting them into my Excels, and it's actually a pretty healthy business case. Like I've been trying to put in these type of numbers and build out what it could look like and how much they're making. So it looks pretty healthy. Like even with a low revenue, because you have to assume that the K factor is incredibly high, and that the CPI is quite low. That's the only way it makes sense. So
Yeah.
I was actually asking Suford about this yesterday because I was just putting these numbers in, and I was asking him and another guy, actually Filippo, he's probably been on this podcast. So both of those guys are growth. I was asking is it possible for the K factor to be over 2? Because when I was putting these numbers in, I couldn't make it work unless I got a really high virality, so really high amount of organic traffic, and they said, yeah, it's fully possible that they have the K factor of over 2. Now, if that works, if your CPI is low enough, we're talking about like $1 to $1.50, and a K factor is over 1, then you can make a pretty healthy business case. And retention numbers like that, you can make an incredibly healthy business case of $1 billion game with an ARPDAU of that low.
So what's your question, Eric? Like the one part about like whether to sync up with PC console, I think in this case is a technical decision. Like there's just no way they could convince Respawn to make the Apex Legends PC console game also work on mobile. The advantage there is like with Fortnite, when you have an event in Fortnite, then it can carry over to mobile, but that only worked when they actually had mobile versions. The disadvantage here is that you have to scale an entirely different service with its own thing. Right, like Call of Duty Mobile and Call of Duty Warzone are two completely different live services that have to scale completely separately. And I think when you work with somebody like Tencent, in this case, that works out for them, right? It makes it much more feasible to develop. So the big pro that I have here is that they're working with Lightspeed and Quantum, right? That they're working with the guys who have built PUBG Mobile to build this game.
Right.
So there's just like a huge advantage there of people that already understand what cosmetics work, how to kind of figure the retention out early and get the game moving. But in terms of my predictions before, it's going to be slow growth, I think. So if you like, it's going to be more, it will probably get lower downloads if you just think about the brand power of Call of Duty versus Apex Legends, and potentially better monetization. I don't know about that, especially not in the first year. I think just based on this model, based on what we've seen in terms of RPI curve growth in mobile shooters, and the fact this is a very cosmetic-driven game with a lot of different characters, I don't know if you can expect better monetization.
No. My assumption is that you get lower downloads, so maybe higher levels of conversion because of
they're
the
just
core
naturally
nature of the
because
game.
of
And so the RPI it improves relative to the others. So higher RPI, lower downloads, leading to either similar revenue as Call of Duty or higher potentially. I mean, that's just my gut. And then like the one pushback I got at the App Annie event was that, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and I'm going to do some work and get back to you guys next week, is that maybe shooters are not doing as well as I thought. I thought they were kind of, I was thinking of the lines of what Nibishka said, like they're still heavily organic and they have like lots of broad interest, and you don't need to it's low CPIs. But this guy was actually, I kind of made that comment, and he called me out, and he's like, "Are you sure about that?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not sure." You know, like that was like one of those feedback moments where I'm like, "Oh my god, I just can't spew this bullshit. I have to actually look at this data." So I'll look at it and I'll come back to you next week. But But if that's not the case, if you can't get the organics, you can't get the K factor and all that crap. K factor, you're just meaning multiple of
Yeah,
K
multiple
versus
with an
organic.
acquisition.
Okay, but I just, we'll see, right? There's a lot of fucking shooters out there, right? And Greena, we talked about this last week. Greena is dying right now, and we don't really know why, right? And so, and maybe this is part of it. Maybe there's a certain level of fatigue, or some people are saying that people are fucking not playing video games anymore. They're going outside and frolicking in the sunshine. I don't know, all these kids, but so anyway, it's something I will look at.
The organics are high. Like there are games like look at Frag Arena. That's a good example. There's a Critical Ops. There's a bunch of shooters that when you start looking at when have they updated their ads the last time, some of them have updated like a year ago. So meaning that they're not really running any ad campaigns. Like Critical Ops is a good example with 100 million downloads and still getting 1 million a month.
Look, for the fucking record, okay, I this is mind-boggling to me, this whole thing, and I didn't want to go on this rant today because I didn't prepare, but it is UA Armageddon out there, right? I don't give a shit what Unity says, what AppLovin says, what IronSource says. It is a fucking disaster out there, right? And it's getting worse, and it's going to get much worse over this next year. AppLovin, Unity, and IronSource are fucked, right? And so I think it impacts everything. It doesn't just impact Puzzle or fucking Social Casino, of which it does, and Social Casino is completely doomed, right? But it's like everything is getting more expensive to acquire for, right? And that shooters are not eliminated from that notion, right? And so this is so what happened like 3 months ago or 6 months ago is fucking irrelevant, right? It's what the new situation now. They remove IDFA, they remove Google's identification, they remove fingerprinting. How in the fuck are you going to find your audience of people that actually spend money on this shit? It's going to be like shooting blanks out there,
And that's why
approach.
Broader games are most likely to succeed better on IPs. But anyways, to conclude the episode, stop dead naming App Annie. It's Data AI. So that's one.
No. I got permission to use whatever the fuck I wanted to use.
Okay.
Because I'm never calling them Data AI because that's a stupid fucking name. And App Annie is what I've known. And I'm old and I can't.
They were probably looking at Facebook turning into Meta, and they were like, call us then Data.
No, actually, what is it? I forgot. I have a blank on his name. Yan. He actually went through the reason at the podcast. It made sense, right? They want to become.
Well, to be honest, App Annie made no sense as a name.
App Annie made zero sense. It was the stupidest name ever.
But they had the cutest logo, though, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but okay. So Eric will continue dead naming App Annie, and to conclude this, also give us that goddamn star. It's the spot. If you're listening to this on the Spotify,
I
you don't have to.
Decided yet. I still.
You don't have to. You don't have to. But check it out. There's find a podcast that you like and give that podcast a star. Give several podcasts a star. It's free. And also register for the live TWIG by following the link in the description. And we love you guys, and we appreciate you guys, and appreciate all the feedback. So on that note, next week is going to be live TWIG. That's it.
And I'm not on it, right? I don't have to do anything next week?
You don't have to do anything. We're live in the sound.
And all this feedback that I got is Unleash the Beast. Yeah. I'm going hog wild right now. Within my lane.
It's going to be so bad because Eric is going to be high on love in Istanbul during this live TWIG. So I'm afraid. So that's why you have to sign up for the registration. And tickets are out. There's no more tickets. But if you are C-suit somewhere, then ping me. But pretty much that's the only way to get in anymore. So on that note, catch you guys next week. Bye bye.